Hi, this is Pavel with a C# exercise from the book Visual C# 2012 How to Program, Chapter 4 and Exercise 15 called Target Heart Rate Calculator. So basically it says, let me make this a little bigger so you can see it better. Alright, so it says that while exercising, you can use a heart rate monitor to see that your heart rate stays within a safe range suggested by your trainers and doctors. According to the AHA, which is American Heart Association, the formula for calculating your maximum heart rate in beats per minute is 220 minus your age in years. So if you're 20 years, the maximum would be 220 minus 20 is 200. Now your target heart rate is a range that is 50 to 85% of your maximum heart rate. So 50 is the minimum recommended, otherwise it's not much of an exercise, and 85 of it is the maximum that you should keep your heart rate in while exercising. Now, but the programming we're going to do is has to do with the object orientation, because we are going to create a class called HeartRates, and the class attributes should include the person's first name, last name, year of birth, and the current year. Your class should have a constructor that receives this data as parameters, and for each attribute we will provide a property with set and get accessors. The class also should include a property that calculates and returns the person's age in years, a property that calculates and returns the person's maximum heart rate, and properties that calculate the minimum and maximum target heart rates. And we will write an app that prompts for the person's information, instantiates an object of class heart rates, and displays the information from the object including the person's first name and last name and year of birth, and then calculate and display the person's age, minimum and maximum target heart rate. Alright, so we will need one class. I already created it, called heart rate, and in it, if you remember, we need first name, last name, year of birth, and current year. So I'm gonna create some private members. I will do private string first name, private string last name, and private integer, because we are just getting the year, called year of birth. Now we will also calculate the person's age based on the year of birth and today's date, but I'm not gonna create a private member for that. We will just create a read-only property, because that's gonna be a calculated field. We're not going to set it manually, and we're not gonna let the user set it either. It's gonna be just calculated from the system time minus the year of birth. Alright, so these are our private members. Now let's do the constructor, and I will create, we will pass in it first name, we will pass a string of last name, and an integer year of birth. So these are the values or arguments that the user will supply, and we will instantiate all this in our constructor. Now before I do that, I'm going to create some properties, because we are going to assign these arguments to our properties. So assigning first name, if provided, we will let the user not to provide it if the user decides not to. So we will do public string first name, and the get will simply return our first name member, the private member first name, and we will set it, well, let me just set it as a, if the user does not provide anything, if it's empty, then we will simply output or assign first name to be not available, like n/a. Otherwise, we will assign whatever the user supplies. And I'm gonna use a ternary operator for that. So we will do first name equals, and what it equals is we will check the value that is provided. So is the value empty? If it is, then our first name will simply be not available. If it is not, then our first name will equal to the value. Simple as that. Now we will assign last name if provided, and I will just take this because this is going to be very similar. I'll just call this last name, and this is going to be our last name, and this will be our last name as well. So now we have our first name and last name if provided. If not, we will assign NA to them. Now we will go and what do we need? We need the year of birth. Now alright, let's do that. Assign year of birth. But if it's not provided, we have to do something with it or about it. So let's just do let's say if not provided, default to 0, and we will check the value, and if it is 0, we can do something with it, inform the user that the value was not provided or something like that. So we will do our public integer year of birth, and our get will simply return the year of birth, and our set, we will again use a little conditional statement, a ternary operator. So our year of birth will equal to whatever the value was or was not provided. So we will simply ask, was value less than 1? Like if the year of birth, even that is actually quite stupid, because obviously we're not going to be starting from year 1, year of birth. But for our purposes, that's good enough, I guess. So if it was the value less than 1, if it is, default it to 0. Otherwise, our year of birth will equal to the value provided. Alright, so we have that. Actually, we need one more. We need to calculate, we need to get the current year. So our current year is set in constructor. Well, it is not set yet, but I'll set it in a minute, and it cannot be set by user. So it's simply going to be a read-only property, public read-only. It's going to be an integer, and I'll just call it current year. So now I have all these 4. I have first name, last name, year of birth, and I will calculate the current year in our constructor. I will assign all of them in our constructor. So let's start with the year. So I will getting the current year, and we will assign the property current year. We will set it to our date time of today, and we only want the year. So that is our current year. Again, we will not let the user to set it manually. This is going to be strictly set within the constructor. Once the class is instantiated, the object instantiated, current year is set automatically with it. So now we will assign values passed into constructor. So we will now assign the first name, last name, and year of birth that the user provided to our properties. Our first name property, so it's again, this is the property and not the not the private member, not the private variable, equals first name, and first name is passed to our constructor by the user. So our last name property will equal to last name from the constructor, and finally our year of birth will be the year of birth from the constructor. Okay, so we have that, and now we can do some more calculations. Let's calculate person's age. So we can do a public integer person age. It's going to be just a simple property with get, no set. Again, this is just a calculated property, so we're not gonna have any set. We will simply return what's the person's age. Well, it is the current year. In our case, it's 2015 minus whatever the person's year of birth is. So we will pass the year of birth property, not the private member year of birth, but the property, because we already in our property we check what was actually supplied, and we will default it to 0 if nothing was, or if the not correct value was supplied. So that's why you want to use the properties in these calculations. So that's the age. Now let's calculate maximum heart rate, and we can do public integer maximum heart rate, and again it's just gonna be a get, and we will return, if you remember, the maximum was 220 minus the age. So we will do simply 220 minus the person's age property, because the person's age property calculates the person's age, obviously. So we have that. Now we can calculate the let's say maximum. Now let's calculate the minimum target heart rate, which was, remember, 50% of the maximum. So this is the heart rate that you should. This is the range that you should be in when you exercise, and from 50 to 85 it was. So the minimum, so will be simply calculated as integer minimum target heart rate. Once again, it's just gonna be get and return. And since this is an integer, and we will be calculating percentages, like 50%, we can actually get floating point or a double, but we're just gonna convert it all to integer. We don't need to be like, I don't know, 78.5 heartbeats or something like that. So we will simply do convert that to integer 32, and we are converting the maximum heart rate property times 0.5, which makes it the 50% of the maximum heart rate. So 50% is our minimum target heart rate, and similarly we'll do the maximum target heart rate. So this was minimum, this one will be maximum, and this one was 85% of the max. Maximum target heart rate, and so this one will be 0.85, and that's really all our calculations, I believe. Yep, now we just have to display the result, instantiate the object in our program and display the results. So let's do it. Let's simply do console.writeLine. Please enter your first name. Alright, so I have a little too many parentheses like that, and we will do a variable first name will equal to whatever the user will supply. So it's console.readLine. So that's our first name. Now let's do console.writeLine. Please, I always do a lot of these parentheses. Please enter your last name. And similarly, we'll do first variable last name equals console.readLine. And finally, we need to supply the year of birth. So we will simply do console.writeLine. Please enter your year of birth. And we will do variable year of birth equals, now this is an integer, so we have to convert it to integer, and we're converting whatever the user wrote, so it's gonna be console.readLine. So now we have all the input. Now we can instantiate the object. We can do our variable heart rate equals new heart rate, and you can see that it asks for the first name, last name, and year of birth. So we can simply provide those. So it's gonna be first name, last name, and year of birth. And now we have our object, and now we can simply do the output. So let's do the name first. So we will output console.writeLine, and we will do your name is, and we can combine first name and last name together. So it's gonna be first name and last name. So it's gonna be the heart rate. That's the object we just instantiated, and we will call the first name property, and we will call the last name property. So now we will do the console.writeLine. What's next? Something like your maximum safe heart rate is, and that is obviously the object, the heart rate object, the maximum heart rate, not the target heart rate. This is the maximum safe heart rate, and that's the property for that. Console.writeLine, and oh, we need the age actually. Your age is, and that's going to be the which one is it? Person age. Except let me just move this above, like the second line. So it's gonna be the first name, last name, person's age, then the maximum heart rate, safe heart rate, and now we can simply do the minimum target heart rate and maximum target heart rate. Your maximum target heart rate is, and it's gonna be the maximum target heart rate. And finally console.writeLine, and your minimum target heart rate is, and that's gonna be the heart rate dot minimum target heart rate. All right, so let's do one more thing. Console dot read key, just so we pause the screen when we run it in the debug, and let's see what we get. Now let me run it. So it built. So let me write my first name. My last name is not Smith, but in this case it will be, and my age, just 42, maybe or maybe not. And here we go. Your name is Pavel Smith. Your age is... Oh, this is my... Not my... That wouldn't be my age. It would be 1973. Because I entered the year 42 as my year of birth. So 1973 time, I actually meant age, not year of birth, which would be 2015. So yeah, that's actually correct. But obviously this all is all off, because if my age is 1973, I don't have any safe heart rate. My safe heart rate is in negatives because I'm dead. So that's what bad input does for you. But so let me try again. This time, instead of my age, it's asking for year of birth. So in 42 it was what, 1973. So yeah, now my name is Pavel Smith, age is 42. Now if my age is 42, so my maximum safe heart rate, if you remember, was 220 minus the age, which is 178, so that's correct. So and 50% out of it would be my minimum target rate, which is 89, so that's correct. And 85 would be the maximum heart rate, which should be 151. So let's see, times 85, and it's 151. So that is actually correct. So that seems to be working. Now let's test quickly if I don't provide any names. What do we get? If I don't provide name, but I'll provide a year of birth. So my name is not available, but my age is 42. And, but if I let me see if what happens if I provide a wrong date, which I already know because we already got it in negatives. We should never even calculate it. So if I don't provide, if my year of birth is, let's say, 0, it tries to calculate it. The best way to do it, we need to not allow that, basically. So we can come over here and we can do, before we do any calculation or output the age or anything like that, we can simply do if our heart rate, that year of birth, does not equal 0. Remember, we set it to 0 by default if the age provided, or the year of birth provided, was less than 0, or was 0 or less. Alright, so we can check against that. So we are checking against it right now. If it is 0, then we know it was a date that was just wrong. So we can output something, some kind of a message. But if it is not 0, then we can do all these calculations. Else, if it is, then we can provide something like console dot write line, and we can do something like calculations could not be performed because you did not provide a valid birth year. So let's try it again now, and if I don't provide a name, that should be just fine. But if I my year of birth is, let's say, -10, if I enter, it says calculations could not be performed. If I try again, let's say with 0, it's the same thing. Now if I try with a valid date, which was we tried it before with 1973, then it does the calculations. And if the name is not provided, it's just it outputs not available. So let's just provide, let's say, first name but not the last name, and the year. So your name is Pavel and last name not available. And in the, if I don't provide the first name but provide the last name, then it says not available for the first name. Smith, and it still does the calculations because it provided valid year of birth. So obviously this we're kind of checking it against it. The best way would be to check it right here when we are actually asking the user to provide the data. We could go, do like a while loop and keep asking the user to provide valid data as long as they don't provide valid data. And once they do, we would exit the loop. It's this way we're simply collecting the data and then we evaluate them. That's a little too late, but for our purposes, it's it's a working solution. So there you have it, a little object-oriented programming in C#. And if you liked it, I hope you will give me a like for the video. If you know about someone who could use these videos, please share it with them. And of course, write some comments. And I'll see you at the next video. Happy coding!